Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so welcome to this meeting of the East Lothian IJB Audit and Risk Committee on the 6th of December 2022, which is being held remotely. Okay, so hand over to the clerk.
Thank you. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available as a webcast via the Council's website in order to allow the public access to the democratic process in East Lothian. East Lothian Council and NHS Lothian are the data controllers under the Data Protection Act 2018. And data collected as part of the recording will be retained in accordance with the Council and NHS Lothian's policies on record retention. And the webcast of this meeting will be publicly available for up to 6 months. I'll now deal with the following matters. First of all, apologies. We have apologies from Councillor Lynn Jardine. And I'll now go through the roll call of members present. Fiona Ireland.
Present.
Elizabeth Gordon.
Present.
Thank you. And David Binney.
I'm here.
Thank you very much. Lachlan Bruce is not present and he's not given apologies. Can I ask if any members have any declarations of interest?
None.
Nope, that's great. Thank you very much. And we can move on to the business now, Chair.
Thank you. So the first item on the agenda is the minutes of the meeting on the 13th of September, which are for approval and any matters arising. So if we can just look to the minutes, was there anything that anybody felt we needed to add or amend in the minutes? No, no hands. So we're comfortable with the minutes. In that case, we'll accept the minutes of the last meeting. Thank you. In terms of any matters arising that haven't been captured, I think we've captured on the agenda any issues. I'm not aware that there's anything else, is there, Claire?
Yeah, I suppose just on the minutes on the very last item that we considered at the last meeting on the SIPFA's position statement on audit committees with independent members. I suppose it's, if you're okay, I can just give a quick update.
Take that,
So myself, Fiona as Chair of Audit and Risk Committee, Duncan as our Chief Internal Auditor, Fiona Wilson as the Chief Officer and Fiona Curry as our Clerk, all we had a meeting on the back of an action from the last meeting, and we really had a good discussion around considering whether an independent member it's worth pursuing an independent member for this committee. And I think what the kind of the decision that we got to, or the discussion kind of went, was that actually we thought it might be worth doing a bit more training around our current members and using Duncan in a programme that he's developing for East Lothian Council's Audit and Governance Committee, and following a similar process whereby to offer a bit more training and a bit more of a kind of understanding the kind of the skills that sit around each of our committee members. And we thought we should do that first before embarking on trying to appoint an independent member to the committee, because we wanted to understand what if there were any gaps. Is it gaps that we could fill with training, or is it another member that we would look to bring onto the committee? And I hope I've captured that right.
Yeah, I think that's a fair summary of where we got to. And we also acknowledged the fact that already within our terms of reference, we have the ability to co-opt members onto the committee if there's a specific need identified. So, you know, if there was a specific agenda item whilst we're doing this mapping across of skills and training, you know, we have that ability anyhow. So it's not that we don't have the, you know, some rights to bring somebody on anyhow. Okay, so are people comfortable that we do that assessment of our own skills and then, you know, come back and have a look at that and see whether we feel there is a gap on the committee? Yep, comfortable, excellent. Okay, so that's helpful. Thanks for reminding me of that, Claire. I know the meeting was only a few days ago and I've forgotten already. Okay, so on that basis, we're approving the minutes and we've not got any other matters arising. So we move now, Duncan, to item 2, the internal audit report.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, purpose of this report is to inform the Audit and Risk Committee of the recently issued audit report on the CITFA Financial Management Code. And if I can take members to page 11, which is the executive summary for the CITFA FM code. And the review was graded as reasonable assurance. The Financial Management Code produced by the Chartered Institute of Public Finance Accountancy is designed to support good practice in financial management and to assist local authorities in demonstrating their financial sustainability. The East Lothian IJB Audit and Risk Committee on the 15th of March 2022 recommended that the Integration Joint Board consider what elements of the CITFA FM code were relevant to the board, and the audit reviewed the extent to which the CITFA FM standards are embedded within East Lothian Integration Joint Board financial management process. And happy to say that they are the vast majority of the CITFA FM code requirements are already there within our financial management process for the elements that apply to the IJB. However, I'd highlight the following key findings from the review. The East Lothian Integration Joint Board has not formally approved the adoption of the CITFA FM code to support good practice in financial management. However, a report is being presented on the 8th of December to the IJB meeting, recommending that the board formally adopt the appropriate elements of the CITFA FM code, and Claire will be taking that to that IJB meeting. Similarly, the East Lothian Integration Joint Board has not yet prepared a multi-year financial plan, laying out how it will resource delivery of the strategic plan. But however, that is also being detailed at the December IJB meeting on the 8th of December. And the final recommendation that I would highlight is that management have agreed to undertake an exercise to review financial resilience and sustainability following the approval of the financial plan. And that will obviously take a little bit longer, but up to April 2023. Happy to take any questions at this point on that paper.
Okay, are there any questions from anyone present? It seems fairly straightforward, and I'm probably being slightly naive in saying that, but I think we've got a plan in place against anything that we think we've got a gap, is how I'm reading this, and our plans will be concluded by April 2023. So we're talking within a reasonably short time span. Fair?
Yes, I think that's fair to say. He says, but recognising that there's probably a fair challenge there in respect of that longer term financial sustainability. And I know Claire's got her hand up, so maybe wants to say a few more words on that.
Okay, Claire.
Yes, so you're right, Fiona. We've got the two kind of process items will be going to the IJB in December for approval, and one in the financial plan for noting. And I think the longer term action regarding financial resilience and sustainability, the financial plan will be the first time that we've seen it laid out as a standalone plan for the IJB, and it does pose some significant financial challenges. And I think what we will then do is we'll move into a finance development session in January, and that will be the start of the discussion around the resilience and the sustainability and how we move forward. So that's where I was thinking that it would be the development session would be the start of this taking this longer term action forward.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, that's helpful. Okay, so in terms of this paper, we're noting the contents of this paper. There isn't a requirement, therefore, Fiona, I don't believe, for us to do a roll call as long as people are happy. Yep. Okay, thumbs up, excellent. Jolly good. So we'll move on to item 3, Claire, which is the IJB risk strategy and risk policy.
Yes, thank you. So members will be aware that back in September, we held an informal session after our audit and risk business meeting, where we reviewed the IJB risk strategy and risk policy. And following that discussion, officers and I have updated both documents, and they are here today for approval by the committee. These documents will be reviewed again in 3 years, in line with the cycle that we have in place. And for me, as an officer of the committee, I would draw your attention to the risk policy in particular and the last section of the document, which is page 33 in your pack. So for today's meeting, we have covered the last two bullets. So the last two bullets in that very final section. We have today the annual sharing of the IJB's full risk register. And we also have the annual presentation of the Health and Social Care Partnership risk register today for members. Given the nature and content of the risk within the Health and Social Care Partnership register, it was felt appropriate to have this presentation in private. And that was really, just bringing these documents back after the review by the committee in September for a final approval.
Claire, just for the purposes of the minute of this meeting, can you just summarise any other significant changes that we made? I don't think there was anything hugely significant. It was more a technical update.
Yeah, I don't think that there wasn't really any significant updates. It was more just clarification. So in particular, within the risk strategy, we really just wanted to clarify and tidy up the wording, particularly around areas of roles and responsibilities of the chief officer, of IJB members, and of officers, to make sure it was really clear. That was in section 7, structural arrangements and responsibilities. We tidied that up just to make sure it was really clear around the wording. And in terms of the actual risk register themselves, we made sure that everything that we were being had documented that we would include on the risk register. We wanted to tidy that up to make sure it was in line with the system that the risk register is held in, which is Datex. And really that was it. And then the final bit within the policy was the section that I've just referenced. So that risk management policy. And I think that was the one that we wanted to make sure we were covering everything properly. So only reporting risks, routinely reporting risks of rated 12 and above. And given the one that we probably have been lacking in the last couple of years is that actually the Audit and Risk Committee should be providing an annual report to the IJB. So we've got that now documented within the policy, and something that we will actively take forward. And then we have the annual review of the full of the IJB's risk register, and the IJB Audit and Risk Committee receiving the partnership's risk register on an annual basis for information. So that was probably the large. Everything else was pretty okay.
I think it's just helpful to get that docked in the note. In terms of the annual report to the IJB, do we have a timeline for when we're proposing to do that?
So I was potentially thinking following the kind of the financial year. Yep. Unless Duncan had unless you have a completely different, but I was thinking around about
I think we'd kind of discussed and agreed potentially bringing this in as the kind of overall report on the committee, and then bringing it to committee in September, and then going to the IJB meeting in October.
Okay, it's fine, because it'll have to come here and then go to there. Yeah. And in terms of the risk strategy and the risk policy, do we need to take them to the IJB as well? I'm just checking out the governance here, whether we can approve them here, but I think, do they have to also go to the IJB meeting?
They're not on the agenda for the IJB in December.
I'm just wondering if they have to be. I don't know if Fiona Curry could.
I think we need to look back the last time they were approved and just it would be in line with whatever was done previously. Yeah. I can't actually remember if they came to the IJB previously.
Okay, I mean, I'm happy to verbally just update when in the meeting that we've done them, and then we can check between now and then whether they have to formally be docked there. David?
Hi, thanks. I was just wondering, there's a lot of sort of things that are getting kind of reviewed and reported annually. And I was wondering how these sort of annual reviews and reports, if they uncover something, how that feeds into the 3-year reviews that we're recommending.
So the 3-year review is probably the maximum timescale. If we felt as a committee that we wanted to review the audit, the risk strategy or the risk policy, we could do that review at any point in time. And I suppose the annual report from this committee to the IJB, for me, isn't about uncovering anything. It's about providing that level, a bit of assurance to the IJB and giving them an update on, so for example, the type of audits that have taken place during the year, any significant findings, anything that's an update on the accounts, on the external audit plan, on the internal audit plan. So it's really just, for me, it was giving the IJB some sight on what the committee's workload is and assurance in terms of what the committee is delivering.
Yeah. Does that make sense, David, or you?
It was and then it wasn't. But yes, it does. I understand what you're saying, Claire. But I think what you said is that it is open to us to review either of these documents at any point during the 3-year period, if circumstances merit it. So if we discover something, we don't wait 3 years to review it.
No.
We act upon it. And if that's the case, perhaps that's what we should articulate in the recommendation.
Which recommendation?
Well,
David,
it states that we'll be asked to approve the 2 documents,
yep.
And it says that we will review them every 3 years.
So that's in the paper. I think we're being asked to approve them at this stage, and as I suppose there's two entirely separate things being discussed to some extent. The annual review report to the board, to the IJB, is our assurance report, which is entirely separate to the risk strategy, risk policy. I was questioning whether, in fact, the final approval of the risk strategy and policy sits with the IJB as opposed to the Audit and Risk Committee, which it would be in other organisations. It would sit with the board rather than with the Audit and Risk Committee. And I suspect we probably will find that we do have to take these 2 documents to the IJB. So that's why I was clarifying that, separate to the fact that we will take an annual report. I suppose there's a third thing, which is that the maximum period which will go by before we would revisit the risk strategy and risk policy will be its 3-year duration. I think what you're asking, David, is that we approve the risk strategy and risk policy and add that we are also cognizant that we can review these documents again within the 3-year period. Is that essentially what you're asking?
Correct. Yeah, correct.
Yep. Okay, thanks. Lachlan.
Apologies for being late, and I think you answered a question that the question that I was just going to clarify as well. So, no, I'm content now.
Okay.
I managed to preempt me.
That's quite clever. Okay, so Fiona Curry, are we comfortable with the with David's slight amendment that we're approving the risk strategy, we're approving the risk policy, and we're cognizant, so we're not approving, but we're cognizant that we have the rights to review these within the 3 years if necessary, but they would be reviewed at 3 years if they haven't been in between times. Is that?
Yes, I think that's fine. I just need, so David, are you happy to formally propose that change to the recommendations?
Yes.
And can I have a seconder for it, please?
Is that allowed to be me or? Well, Elizabeth's got her hand up, so that's fine.
Okay, thank you. That's so, yeah, we can make that change and then just agree the recommendations as amended. Okay.
So we need to do a roll call vote for these because we are approving.
Yes. So is there any more discussion, or do you want to move to?
I think, well, David, your hand's still up. Are we comfortable to move? No, your hand's gone down, so I think we're comfortable to move to the vote.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And just to be clear, the committee is being asked to approve the IJB's risk strategy, to approve the IJB's risk policy, and to be cognizant that you do have the right to review these policies within 3 years if necessary, but they will be reviewed by a maximum of 3 years, within a maximum of 3 years. So Councillor Bruce,
Approve.
Ms Gordon,
Approve.
excuse me, removing a cat, and Ms Ireland.
Approved.
Thank you. And that's the recommendations approved unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, so we move now, Claire, to the risk register, and as you say, we're looking at the full risk register, so I'll hand over to you.
Thank you. So this is the Q2 IJB Strategic Risk Register for review by the committee today. It's also the annual reporting for the register and not just the reporting of the risks rated 12 and above. There hasn't been much change since the last meeting, and the controls and actions remain in place and ongoing. Although I'd like to bring it to the committee's attention that we have included a new risks for this iteration of the register, and that is to highlight the fact that East Lothian Council's Finance Department are currently operating under business continuity. Within their business continuity, the plan states service and accounting teams, due to challenging and complex financial environment and significant financial risks, are emerging on capital programmes alongside staffing issues. We have an ongoing dialogue with Council Finance, their Executive Director for Council Resources, and we jointly felt that this should be noted within the IJB's risk register. We have rated this 12, so likelihood and with a moderate, so likely and with a moderate impact, and we will continue to refine and update this risk along with partners.
Okay, can we just start on that newly added risk and then look at the others? In terms of the impact on the IJB, I'm presuming this is a reporting impact rather than a funding impact, but a reporting impact in and of itself doesn't help us because we are essentially pooling some of the resources to deliver what we're trying to deliver.
Yeah, so it's not a risk to funding or the IJB's budget, but what it is a risk is in terms of the routine reporting and the routine monitoring of the IJB's delegated budgets. If there is staffing issues within one of our partner organisations, then it does put a strain on the level of service that we get from that partner.
And in terms of us being able to report when we come to the IJB, report a financial position, is that then compromised quite significantly?
I wouldn't say it's compromised significantly. It's more challenging in terms of pulling the position to get together. So it takes a bit more work from we've had to pull in some of the health finance to try and support some of the gaps, and it does make it it makes everything it takes longer.
Okay. And Elizabeth's got her hand up. Can I just ask one more question? What plan has the council got? Because I appreciate this is our risk register, but what plan has the council got to get back to a position of stability?
So that's the bit that we're still in a bit of dialogue around the longer term or the medium term, the longer term plan in terms of that kind of exiting from business continuity. I know that the Council Finance Department have been going through a period of restructure, and I've tried to do have had a big recruitment drive, and so we're really just waiting to see if any of that changes this position. So it's quite a live issue, and one that we're actively speaking to them routinely just so we can manage expectations as well. Mm-hmm. But it's a risk worth noting on the IJB's risk register.
Yeah, absolutely. Elizabeth?
Thanks. Just had a few questions, some of which you actually already answered, Claire. One question was whether or not, I take it, is your role completely separate from the East Lothian Council Finance Department?
Yes, in so much as that, so both our partners have their own financial ledgers, And as much as I'm the CFO, I rely on individuals doing the scrutiny of the ledger and providing the reports and providing some analysis if it's required. So yeah, I kind of rely on that. We rely on the council finance department for that. And we don't at the moment have any integrated in the fullest sense staff. So we have health finance teams that sit within the health department that have access to the health financial ledger, and we have council finance that have access to the council ledger. And we currently don't have a kind of staff with access to both ledgers, and that's maybe something that's a solution potentially moving forward. But that would obviously require approval and sign up from East Lothian Council.
Okay, thanks. And then the second question I had is it been a matter of weeks since this happened, or is this situation with business continuity been a couple of months? What sort of time frame are we looking at?
So it kind of probably happened more during the COVID period, whereby people were getting redirected and there was different priority areas of works. But as other departments have come out of that kind of business continuity mode, the council finance, because of the staffing issues that they are facing, they've been unable to come to get out of it.
Okay, thank you. That was all my questions.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. So just on that particular risk, I wonder if that's one that we ought to be flagging up, that it's been discussed here, and flag that up at the IJB come later this week.
Yeah, I have actually also. I think I've included it in. I think I should know this because I've just wrote the finance. I'm sure I've put it in the risk section of the finance paper for the IJB, just to make sure it was highlighted as well.
Yeah, that's grand. That's good. Okay, so in terms of that or any of the other risks that are on this overarching risk register, is there anything, Ian, you want to bring up?
Thanks.
Anything?
There is a risk that's on the register, and sorry, I'm just juggling screens. Have a look at it, but it's in relation to instability. So 3926, potential instability of elections. So this was around our concerns. Certainly over the last few years, we've had multiple elections that have had impacts in the IJB, and in particular this year, a number of IJB members changed. I think that whole risk can be removed now. I was looking into the sort of election timetables, and I think we're quite a few years away from anything like that happening again.
Okay, are people comfortable with that proposal from Ian? Agree, Lachlan. Yep.
Agree.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. If we're several years away, then that seems sensible. So yep, happy for that to come out. Okay. Elizabeth.
Thanks. I just had a question about risk 3924, which is the financial resources may be insufficient to sustain the strategic plan. And I just wondered, regarding, obviously I can see it's rated medium, and I was surprised it wasn't high, because of the risk with not having sufficient funds for both NHS and councils going forward with the economy and noises from the UK government. I just wonder what the thought process around that was.
So the reason that we had that one rated as we did was the fact that we were in the process of, we had the financial monitoring for the IJB, we had a previous version of it, the IJB's financial plan, but we also had our IJB general reserve, which is a contingency reserve. So we'd actually, we had our general reserve, which was just slightly above our reserves policy, our reserves policy target of 2%. So we, as an IJB, we did have a bit of resilience there. I do think that risk will potentially change for the next meeting of this committee, because at the moment we don't have any clarity around the budget offer position for next financial year. But we are probably informally aware that it will be significantly challenging for both our partners. And I think at that point, once we have a bit more clarity around the budget position coming into that, budget offers coming into the IJB, I think that's a risk that will potentially be increased again, because I do think there'll be significant significant challenges, and probably something that on the back of the finance development session that I mentioned earlier, when we are going to be talking about sustainability and financial resilience, I think that there potentially will be a change to that risk moving forward at the March committee.
Yep. Okay, thanks. Ian?
Apologies, Claire actually covered it exactly. I think until we've received our formal offer from each partner agency, we can't upgrade the risk on that at the moment based on the current offers.
Yeah, so in the current financial year, we're still sitting at a medium, but we think wait till we hear what we're going to get next year and we'll revisit it. Yeah, okay. Are there any other of the risks that anybody wants to ask anything about? Elizabeth?
Thank you. The other one I wanted to ask about was 3925, that operational resources may be insufficient to deliver the strategic plan. I just wanted to understand, obviously I can see this, it's talking about at potential risk of insufficient access to services and resources. Does that also factor in risk of there being a lot of vacancies with staffing and generally that impact that might have?
Yeah, so that risk really focuses on so the IJB's so the resources, both staffing and both workforce and financial, to support the strategic plan and also support the work that's been driven through the IJB's change boards. So the change boards are individual pieces of work that sit below the strategic plan, and yeah, that would be where but that risk is both workforce, external providers, financial. That does cover everything.
Thank you.
Ian, has she answered it for you again, or do you want to come in?
I actually would come in on a separate point, which was around the, if that's okay, I'm happy to give any more information for that point. So it was on risk 4054 in relation to COVID-19. We've been considering this risk just as the years gone on, and the position we've got to, the due date on that is the 31st of March 23. It's really that we're waiting to see how this winter plays out and what the likely directions are from SG in relation specifically to the pandemic. For example, at the moment we're still having discussions around the spring vaccination programme for COVID-19, and we're going to be expected to deliver that. But I think if we get to March next year and we review it at that stage, we may want to severely downgrade it or remove it entirely. It just feels like there are lots of things which we are now having to deal with as a result of the pandemic, but actually responding to the pandemic is not first and foremost.
Yep, it's a fair comment as well, but I think that's a review in March. Holding brief on that one. Yep. Okay. Any other issues anybody wants to raise around the full IJB risk register before we move on? No. David?
Hey, thanks. I'm rather intrigued at the impact of the National Care Service proposals, about them being a high risk. And I was kind of a bit quite interested to understand the logic to it being a high risk. Is the high risk because of the transition and change programme that would be required to move from where we are to where we're going? Or what is it that's making it a high risk?
Ian, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, so I mean, you hit the nail on the head, David. It's that the NCS is sitting on a very high risk from an ELC perspective, from their risk register, because of the structural impact it could have on the resources within ELC. But from an IJB perspective, the way the NCS is being developed, the IJB is not actually explicitly referenced. They talk about care boards or commissioning boards. So I think from within the structure of the IJB and the existence of the IJB and the framework under which it operates, all of those things are potentially subject to change. Now, that's not necessarily a negative in overall levels of provision, but I think as a risk to the structure of the IJB, that is a significant risk that we may be in 5 years down the line and the IJB may no longer exist in its current guise.
Is that a high risk or or something else?
I would say for the function of the IJB, it is a high risk in terms of The HSCP, for example, I wouldn't class it as necessarily the same level of risk.
Yeah, okay. Right, I understand what you're saying. Thanks.
I think what it's quite an interesting one, because we have to wait and see how this plays out, but potentially we could be back to two bodies rather than the partnership arrangement that we currently have, which would be a very interesting position to be in. Okay, any other points? Claire?
I suppose just to follow up on what Ian has provided there, but also I agree. I do think it is a high risk to the IJB, and I think there isn't, because there isn't a lot of clarity that's came out from the bill that's been published on the National Care Service, but it does impact on both our partners. I think from a financial perspective, there is a real risk that partners may find it difficult to invest in specific areas or specific infrastructure under health and social care if there's a risk that will be moving to a different body in the future.
Yeah, we maybe need to capture that actually in the risk, don't we? But anyhow, we can look at that as time moves through. Duncan, did you want to come in on the same point to try and respond to David? Or
yes,
I've got a plethora of hands.
It was the same point, and particularly in relation to the financing. I know Audit Scotland have done a report for the Scottish Parliament in respect of funding decisions that still would need to be taken, and there is some risk around where and how the funding would be found moving forward for NCS, which at the moment there isn't that clarity there, which I think probably does put it in the high risk category from a financing perspective as well.
Thanks, Duncan. Ian, do you want to come back on that one, or will I invite Lachlan in first?
Invite Lachlan, and then I can maybe answer.
And then you can answer both. Okay, yeah. Lachlan.
No, I was just wanting to agree from my view of the council. Sorry, from the council side, just around the National Care Service and its effect on the council in terms of its ability to invest longer term in social care and make those investments around care home capacity or anything that we want to do. I do think it's a significant risk. Having that possibly, I think 2026 is the year I've seen mooted as the launch point for National Care Service, and just that potential to have a 4-year break where we've got people who are really partners that are thinking in the long term, because one of them is not going to be in social care for much longer if it goes ahead as planned. So it was just to reiterate, I think, that point, and I think maybe for future meetings we could go into a wee bit more detail about what that risk is within the register. It's just a bit empty at the moment.
It's a wee bit woolly at the moment, but I think it's probably as best as we can right now. But I think as we know a little bit more, we'll probably the risk might well actually go up as we know more.
Well,
because we'll have that interim period where we're operating in a bit of a no man's land.
Well, I think I think the problem is I don't think anybody knows. I don't think the minister knows. The Scottish Government knows exactly what they're going to do. So, yeah, I was just to reiterate those points from a council point of view. But thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. And I think that's...
So it was really just to say that unusually in this risk we don't have a control in place, and that's for that reason we've just discussed that there's still a lot of speculation here, and really all we have is the progress, which is that Fiona in particular is working through the Chief Officer's network to try and get as much insight as she can. Yep.
No, I think that's fair, and I think it's one we'll come back to, because we'll be looking at highs and very highs anyhow. So that's grand. Okay, Lachlan, your hand's still up. I think it might be a legacy hand. Yep. Okay, so in terms of this item, I think we are noting, we are indeed noting the risk register. So that actually concludes the agenda items for the formal Audit and Risk Committee for today. Am I correct, Fiona?
Yes, if members are happy to note the recommendations.
Yep, I'm happy to note that. Yep, everybody
agreed.
Happy? Yep, agreed. Great, we're all happy. Okay, so in that case, if we could mute our microphones, we'll do the... Over to Claire.